top. I'm just going to look back down so you can see what it's like from that side. Hi everybody who's just joined us since we started. We've been going for about a quarter of an hour, 17 minutes, and we're back on. So just pan around. We're back on Priory Row, which is where we with that house looking down there, and this is the top of Hilltop. If you'd like to get a postcard of that while we're here, I'm just going to get a little tissue and dab the camera because I think there's a little bit of a moisture on the camera. One moment. That's better. Hi Lorraine. No, it's actually not too bad. As not as bad as it seems, and I think it's probably because of all the noises and everything. But hi there, Anne. Thanks for joining me again. But I just want one little thing while we're here. You may not be able to see it, but here's the sign for Hilltop, and then above where that security camera is, you can see like the original Hilltop. It's like a white lettering on a black or very dark blue thing there. So that's like I'm guessing Victorian, early Edwardian original of the sign. And I think that security camera looking down Hilltop is supposed to put your mind at rest. I'm not sure it does, to be honest. It does, Carl. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And that's what I was a bit. Just want to be careful of my foot in. It's been so wet here. I didn't want to be concentrating on the gimbal work and then find myself falling over. So now we're going to walk along to, which is an important landmark in Coventry crime buildings. It gets very quiet. I think it's because it's a wet Monday, but normally this place is absolutely heaving. There's a couple of restaurants and usually lots going on. The cathedral, Coventry Cathedral, is just behind me to the left. We'll see a better view of that in a moment. But this building in front of me now, with the columns, the lit up columns you can see there, was the Magistrates Court, Coventry Magistrates Court, known as County Hall for many years. In fact, from 1783, when it opened as a court and the prison. Just stop here, from the court and the prison and it moved in 2010, I think, to another street, and we'll see the modern Magistrates Court later on in the tour. So every Sam, we got kicked out of the Slug and Lettuce, or of the tour. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right, William. But it's pretty good. It's pretty good for running a tour when it's like that. But the Slug and Lettuce, this would have been initially the Magistrates Court, where every criminal, including the two that I mentioned earlier on, the drunken disorderlies and Edward East, who shot his wife in the face, he would have been brought here before the magistrates. If you go in there now, it's got the original dock just in front of the door there, where the door is. Just behind there is the dock, and then you've got the bench where the magistrate sat is at the top. Just before the bar is a small square on the there's a small square in the floor, and that's where the prisoners were brought up, because behind, just pan around now, behind that building was the jail as well. And we'll just have a little look at St Michael's Holy Trinity while we're here. As I said, this isn't like a history of Coventry tour, but you can go those. But it's such a lovely shot at night time. Hi there, Brian. Peach and Frog. That sounds lovely. That sounds lovely. Now the County Hall, as I said, at one time it was also used as because Coventry was its own county at one point, and it had also, as well as magistrates' hearings here, it actually had sort of courts as well. And probably its most famous trial that took place here was that of Mary Ball in 1849. She was found guilty of poisoning her husband. She was only a young lady, but in those days, when you're found guilty, the execution also took place in this place. So where this Slug and Lettuce seating area is here, alongside the County Hall, that's where Mary Ball was executed. She was hanged here, and the newspapers at the time reported there were 20,000 people turned up to witness that execution. So the space where we're standing now is was, you can imagine, absolutely packed out with people, because it was a form of entertainment, unfortunately, executions, and also a way of entrepreneurs to make a bit of money, because they'd basically, whenever there was an execution, public execution, they'd print, draw up and print these things called broadsheets that had a little illustration of an executed person, generic image, and then they'd say, oh, it's the horrible execution of Mary Ball, and then they'll go around selling it for a penny or something to everyone in the crowd, and usually they sell a lot of broadsheets. In later years, later Victorian era, when photography sort of really started, they'd quite often get an image or photograph of a killer, of someone, and they'd get little cards printed, carte de visite. They'd get cards printed and sold. They walk around selling them. So, as Anne says, you're absolutely right. Alessandra said, rather, they're exactly right. They'd turn up, and some people would queue overnight to make sure they got a good seat. They'd take some food with them, a packed lunch as such, and then sort of sit there just waiting for that few moments. I mean, it's really, I think, the anticipation more than anything, because obviously once someone's on the gallows and the lever's pulled and the drop happens, I mean, it's all over in seconds. So the act itself wasn't that really worth waiting for, I guess. But it's just like you see on some of the films or TV. Big crowd would turn up, be a big cheer go up when the thing drops, and the poor victim is kicking their legs, and so that was a form of entertainment. And eventually they moved executions behind prison walls, so just to deter the crowds from turning up to watch. Now, this building on the left-hand side here, underneath the lamp, where you can see like the black post boxes, that was the house of the governor of the jail. So very, very compact. You'd have the governor's accommodation to the left there, and then you'd have the court would be there, and then behind the two is the jail. Oh, it's not there now, although the cells are, and you can see that. Actually, the Slug and Lettuce, in addition to having the dock and everything there, if you go towards the back, it's got a skylit ceiling, so glass ceiling, and you can look up and you can see some of the old cell things. That's right, Carl. If the executioner didn't do a very good job, they certainly could take a long time to die. And I think it's been documented that some inept executioners, if the prisoner wasn't killed straight away, they'd sometimes go under the pit and they'd jump and grab them around the legs, so that the extra weight would basically snap the neck as we get down there. So this is just going to stop here. This is Bailey Lane now, and I think, again, an absolutely lovely shot for a postcard. If you're you'd think it is haunted. Alessandra, absolutely. I'm sure that there's stories in there. I mean, I don't have any sense of the supernatural or psychic ability at all. As I say, Jo, who runs Hideous Histories on HeyGo, she's much more attuned, and I'm sure she knows all these stories and can sense stuff herself. So it may be worth finding her on HeyGo if you haven't seen her tours already. So we're walking down Bailey Lane now, and I'm going to stop in the corner to tell you the other story, but I just want to pan round a little bit to the left, because this is the remains of the second Coventry Cathedral after St Mary's Priory. This was bombed during the Second World War, and just the outside remains now. We get a good view from the bottom as well, but the new current Coventry Cathedral is built immediately alongside it, and it's almost like connected. You can see, I'm just going to go over to this gate and have a look through here for you. Here we are, the ruined Cathedral Church of St Michael. Now, I got one bar of signal, so hopefully I won't drop out. I'm going to go in there. So yeah, dating from 1300, one of the largest parish churches in England. I'm going to go and sort of peek through this gate, so you get an idea of the inside of what was. There we are. It's lovely, isn't it? It's definitely worth. So if you ever come to Coventry or the Midlands, definitely worth a visit here. And then the building in the background there is the 1960s cathedral, which has got the fantastic coloured stained glass. Really worth looking up online. If you do just Google Coventry Cathedral, and you'll probably see this version, and you'll also see the 1960s one, which the stained glass window is absolutely spectacular. Definitely worth a look. Now I'll look at the cathedral from the other side as well, so you get a good view then. But this, as I say, this is Bailey Lane, and again another good shot looking down this side. If I can get my gimbal to work. Hi Lorraine. It's Neville Staples, Manchester. Wow. Well, that's amazing. We see Neville does come to Coventry, doing some events quite a little bit. That's absolutely amazing, fantastic. I hope I'm still here. So, are we still talking music, Alessandro? You're talking about the Rolling Stones looking very old? No, I'm just joking. Yeah, this is the I don't know whether the original cobbles of Bailey Lane, but certainly they are very dated, and we're looking at a lady named Henrietta Wesley. She was 24-year-old lady, and in 1867 she was seeing a young man 19 years old named Thomas Baker. They'd had a child together who was 2 years old. So Thomas at 17 had fathered a child with Henrietta Wesley, lived on, as I said, on Bailey Lane. But because they'd had that child, Henrietta was constantly on at Thomas, when are you going to marry me? When we're going to get married? And eventually he gave in and said, right, he went and met her here in Bailey Lane and said, okay, we're engaged now. Let's go for a walk and we'll set the date and talk about the wedding. So he met her at the house, and we're going to walk along a bit further now. Met her at the house, and they went for a walk out of Coventry, about a mile and a half outside of Coventry. Went to an inn, sat down and had a couple of drinks. And while they're in the inn, he lifted his jacket pocket and showed her he had a pistol in the inside pocket. And she said, "What's that for?" He said, "Oh, I'm just so jealous of you. I'm so jealous of you, Henrietta. All these men are chasing after you." And she said, "Well, you've agreed to marry me now." Hi there. Sorry, I just reconnected there. Hi Lorraine. Yeah, it said it was reconnecting, so I'm just carrying on walking a bit further on and see if we can get a better signal down at this end. It's all these thick buildings. Am I still there? According to my signal, I got one little bar. Can you hear me okay? I'm back again, am I? Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, he was Thomas Baker was so jealous of Henrietta that he showed her the pistol and said, "I've got to, I'm going to make sure that you're mine." And on the walk back, just going around a little bit. On the way back, Henrietta was sort of feeling very pleased. She got a man, a nice, no doubt, a warm feeling for the few drinks that they'd had. And she took Thomas by the arm, but then put her head on his shoulder, and all of a sudden she felt like a sting in her neck, and thought, well, he slapped me, and then she pulled her hand down and found that her hand was covered in blood, and she fell to the floor and fainted for about a minute. When she woke up, she looked up and saw that Thomas Clark was running up the street. It turned out that his revolver in his pocket had actually gone off and shot her on the corner of the jaw and the neck. Again, she survived, and he was brought before the magistrates here at County Hall that we looked at a moment ago. And basically she refused to press charges, and he said, it was an accident. I didn't mean to shoot poor Henrietta, and he was acquitted. And bizarrely, beside the fact that she'd taken him to the magistrates for shooting her in the face, they actually stayed together and had 2 children. After that, they didn't get married. I'd like to say they got married and it went with a bang, but I can't say that. So they stayed together and had 2 further children, and they both went on to live long lives. So it's absolutely amazing, really, that she still sort of trusted him that respect. And obviously she'd had lots of attention from other people, so she could have really had a pick of men. Now what I'm going to do is scroll around now. I'm in St Mary's Lane, and just scroll back a little bit here where we've got the light. Hi Sandy, thanks for joining us. Now I'm just looking at this building here, and you can see Coventry Cathedral in the background there. This space here, I'll keep moving back a little bit more, was where the Victorian police station was. And again, this is 1920s style now, because the town hall and the complex that was behind me for the town hall, but it was again had a direct hit during the war. And I've got a photograph of what it was like after it had been struck, which I'm going to post now, hopefully. There we go. This is looking from pretty much from the spot I am now. You can see the cathedral to the right hand side, and then to the left is the police blue lamp, which was sort of standing outside. But what I like about this picture is you can see like the white wall where the building used to be, and there's a door there to a room which no longer exists, but there's a policeman's cape hanging from the back of that door. It'd obviously been placed there earlier the day, before the police station was had that hit, so that you can see that the people there clearing all the rubble and everything. And then this was sort of rebuilt as it was now. Now I understand that below the ground, below the pavement level, there are still cells and operational parts of the police station. It moved to another street, which we'll see towards the end of the tour. We'll get an idea of what's there. But I just want to say, talking about the war, behind me to this side is an air raid shelter. Again, my friend Joe on Hideous History does an air raid tour, worth looking at. To be honest, Coral, I don't believe that there were any fatalities from the police station. Now I don't know the reason for that. I don't know whether it was a time where it was there obviously would have been some on duties, even if it was night time, but I don't know the details on that. But I'm going to carry on. Just notice I'm already more than halfway through, so let's carry on down to the next, just around the corner for the next stop, and I'll get another view of the cathedral and then another gruesome story. But yeah, as I said, I'm not that I'm trying to do myself out of tours, but there are other Coventry guides that give tours which are sort of different or additional information into what I do. So if we get round to the corner here, and we're still on Bailey Lane, but it's quite developed now. This is the Coventry Archives. The museum's known as the Herbert, after thanks very much, Anne, after the benefactor. So if we look back up here to see like the ruins of the cathedral. The gimbal's gonna behave itself. Let's get out of that light. Yeah, you just see like a nice silhouette there. But if you ever Google Coventry murders, probably the first one you're going to get up. There's three major Coventry tours, Coventry murders rather, and the one you're going to hear about is or read about is a young lady named Mary Ann Higgins. She was 19 years old, and in August 1831 she was living with her uncle because both her parents had died and she was orphaned. So he was a widowed gentleman. He was quite well off, and he agreed to take in his niece, and he brought her up basically. And obviously there was no other family, so she stood to inherit all the money. Well, an older guy in his late 20s named Edward Clark realised there was a gold mine opportunity for him. So he took an interest in Mary Ann Higgins, and he persuaded her to speed up the inheritance process and to poison her uncle. And poor Mary Ann was in love and young and foolish, shall we say, so she agreed, and she made some pea soup for her uncle, which was laced with poison. The old man died a very painful death, and Edward Clark, who was also taken before the magistrates and then committed to trial, he was acquitted because they couldn't prove he had anything to do with it. So poor Mary Ann Higgins was executed on her own. But the reason for telling the story here while we're at the archives is because in 1972 the archives had received a donation. It was a box, and inside the box was a bag, and I'm going to post an image now to show you what was inside the bag. This is what they found, and this is a skull of Mary Ann Higgins. Effectively, after she'd been executed, her body was dissected for medical research, and you can see that basically that gap in her skull was where her brain was removed. It'd been embalmed, and there's still tufts of hair and ligaments and things on that skull. Obviously they didn't know what to do with it, and it's still now in the archives. It's stored in a hat box within the archives, and I think you can go and request handling to have a look at the exhibit. I don't think many people are allowed, but it apparently is there as an option to look at. So if you're ever in Coventry and you want to see what the skull of a convicted and executed murderer looks like, then you can go and look at the skull of Mary Ann Higgins. So we're moving back on. I just want to get you one more shot of one more view of the cathedral, because it's so lovely at night. If we just scroll around now, there we are. Yeah, I think that's right, Cole. I think that's right. I think you may, if you do go and look at the skull, you'll definitely have a drink at the Slug and Lettuce afterwards anyway. Hi Meadow. Yeah, I think that's it. It's interesting. I mean, this is 1831. So they definitely were learning quite a bit about the medical side. Then obviously after the Anatomy Act, the Burke and Hare antics weren't going on anymore, so they were desperate to get any medical exhibits they can for the family couldn't reclaim the body. That was part of the deal, if you like. So we're still on Bailey Lane, and we're coming on to Jordan Well now, which is where our next dark tale is. I'm glad to see the signal's still holding up. A little bit more traffic here, so we've got a bit more noise. Hi there, Gory, Stephanie. I can't believe how quickly the time goes, so I'm going to have to schedule these for longer than an hour. But if I do run over, it won't be by much, and I hope you can stay with me to hear the rest of the story. We're basically going to do a loop now, back to the finish. And this is what modern Coventry looks like now. This is a very vibrant city. There's lots of students and university crowd, so it's there's always something going on. I'm just going to get down beyond this loop here and stop. Hi Candice, that's very kind of you to say. I all have more to tell than the time allows, so I just think sometimes if I say a tour's going to take 90 minutes, it may put people off from joining in. But just going to try and put down this umbrella. It's stopped raining now, luckily. That's it. So we're now on Jordan Well, and I think I've got a photograph, hopefully, of what Jordan Well used to look like at the time of the story I'm about to tell you. Quite different to to what it is now. Here we are. So a lot of Victorian Coventry look very much like the photograph I've just posted. Very tight knit, ramshackle almost in a way, but nothing at all like the busy streets you can see now. Thanks very much, Jill. Thanks everyone for your kind comments. But it was on Jordan Well, I don't know the number, but somewhere along this street, that a man named Samuel Holmes lived at in the 1850s. He was a retired Coventry City policeman, and he would have been working at the police station we just walked past, that I showed the bombed photograph of. Yeah, that's right, Sam. In fact, I mean, everywhere is. I mean, you've got Jordan Well there, behind me is High Street, and if you can see images of that, it looks very, very similar. I'm sure I'd love to have gone back in, be able to travel back in time and visit it as it was. But in 1859, Samuel Holmes just left the Coventry City Police, and he was living here on Jordan Well, and he had a daughter named Elizabeth. And Elizabeth had married a man named John Kington, and this is one of the other famous Coventry murder cases, along with Mary Ann Higgins. Effectively, Kington was a member of the Warwickshire militia, a very, very violent man. Everyone who knew him had said he'd get into a fight for no good reason. That was his first reaction, was to get violent to any confrontation. He'd married Elizabeth Kington and been extremely abusive to her. They had a child, and he'd been abusive to the child. They'd been so bad, she'd been to the magistrates and got a restraining order. He'd served 3 months in prison for assaulting her. And when he was in prison, Elizabeth moved back with her father here on Jordan Well. The very day after Kington came out of prison, he came to the house and said, "Right, you're coming back home with me." And she refused to do so. And he said, "Well, I'll come back again and try tomorrow, and see if I can change your mind." So the next day, again, he knocked on the door about 7 o'clock in the morning before she went to work. He said, "Do you mean to come back with me?" And she replied, "No, I don't. I'll stay here with Father." And he said, "Well, I'll walk with you on the way to work and one last try." So they walked down this road that we see in front of us, and he persuaded her to sort of step into a field which used to be, back in the 1850s, behind the left-hand side there. And no sooner had they gone into the field, where he grabbed her hair from behind, just move the gimbal around, and cut her throat. Unfortunately, sorry, the gimbal's gone the wrong way. He took a butcher's knife with him, and he cut her throat so deeply that she was almost decapitated. He didn't try to run, he didn't try to escape or anything. He basically stood there until someone fetched the police. The police went to, you can see in the distance there, some green lights. That's a pub called the Royal Oak. They went to the Royal Oak and fetched a door, and they carried the door to the field where they, sorry, I'm going to put the umbrella up. It's raining again. They carried the door from the pub to the field, where they put poor Elizabeth's body on the door, and they carried it to the pub. And this is where the inquest took place, in that pub down there. Now there's little cause of death, but I still have to go through the routine of that. And John Kington, yeah, right, Sam. John Kington, he actually pleaded guilty. He didn't even find murder there, and he was executed. And he was one of the first executions of Warwick prison, behind. Can you hear me? Wait a minute, I'll see if no. Hi, you can hear me now? Is that okay? I think the microphone had just dropped off of my jacket. Let's see if I can pin that back up. Can you hear me okay now? Yeah, it's there's lots to contend with. There's lots to contend with anyway. Without the rain and carrying. Let's hope it stops raining. I can put the umbrella down. I'm going to cross over the road now. Yeah, Kington was executed behind the prison walls. One of the few first away from the crowds. So we walk down here. We're on Much Park Street now. We've just got a little bit to go here. This used to be a very picturesque Victorian street, very much like the one of Jordan Well that I shared with you a while ago. This massive building in front of me now, we're not going to stop here, but that is the combined courts now, big official building, and what we're going to do is turn right behind there and go down the street which used to be called Dead Lane, and here on next story. But yeah, this is again, look at old photographs. This is Much Park Street, and you look at old photographs of Much Park Street, and so atmospheric, and now there's just nothing. There's just nothing left, really. I'll try reconnecting my microphone. Again, if the signal drops, I notice it did just then, I will carry on walking. I won't do any more of the tour that you can't hear. Just need it to stop raining, really. So it's a bit of a shame. There's a that's right, Jill. That's exactly right. And just up here on the left before we turn off, or after we turn off rather, is the gatehouse to Greyfriars Monastery. It's an absolutely beautiful building. It used to be the toy museum in Coventry, if anyone knew that, in the 70s onwards. And it's been closed for a little while and getting a little bit run down. That's that building on the left there. It's all completely under scaffolding now, because they're just like that house at Priory Row we looked at. They're converting that to accommodation, so you'll soon be able to stay, probably some point later next year, I'd imagine. You'll be able to stay there, a bit like an Airbnb. It's quite pricey. Certainly some of the other ones in the city are about £180 for the night, but certainly atmospheric, and if you want to find a ghost, I'm sure you'll find one in there. Now again, we walk down here, a very modern looking built street now, and most of these buildings around us are sort of official places. There's not much to look at now. It used to be from the 13th century. It was called Dead Lane, and it was called Dead Lane because during the Black Plague, this was the street in Coventry where most of the hi Alessandra, no, that's absolutely fine. Thank you for joining me. Hope to see you again on another occasion. I'll be doing this again in the future, but thank you very much, and hope to see you soon. So this street, Dead Lane, this was during the Black Plague. This was a street in Coventry where had the most fatalities in one street as such. It'd been renamed St John Street, which is what it's known now. It'd been renamed St John Street really as far as the 1830s article about PC Samuel Holmes, who we heard about with his daughter being murdered by John Kington on Jordan Well, came to St John Street here to basically they were doing an inspection of a brothel, but that newspaper report still refers to it as Dead Lane, and I guess it was just locally known as such. Thanks, Lorna, that's very kind. No, that's where do you live, Carl? Number 1 Dead Lane. But the interesting thing about that is PC Holmes took the brothel keeper and one of the young girls before the magistrates and gave a description of the house they were in, and the magistrate gave her more of a telling off about the state of the place and what they were carrying out. So she was told to give the place a clean up and then sent on her way, which is not probably what PC Holmes was hoping for when he brought them to magistrates. Now my gimbal's playing up a bit because it's getting a bit wet, so hopefully it'll be okay for the rest of the tour. But the reason we're standing on St John Street. I got a photograph of what it used to look like from this view. There we go. This is a picture of it in the 1960s. Very different to what it is now. This is just before that little stretch was demolished. 15, there was a couple lived here named John McHugh and Louise Cleaver, and with a name like Louise Cleaver, you probably imagine it didn't go very well in the end. Louise had been married to another man, but she'd run off to be with John Cleaver, and the couple had 2 children. John was a reserved private with the Royal Irish Regiment, and when the First World War broke out, he was sent to the Western Front to fight for them there. He was injured and he was returned to a hospital in Dublin. Hold on a sec. And while he was away, when he came out of hospital after 3 months, he came back here to St John Street, and he heard some rumours from some neighbours that while he was away, Louise had been messing around with another man, basically. And this is the first day he was back home, and he went to confront her with the stories, and she refused to sort of talk to him about it. So he said, "Well, let's go to the pub and have a discussion." So they went to the pub, and she refused to talk about it. So they got drunk. She stormed off, and he said, "Well, I'm going home." When he got home, Louise wasn't there, and she eventually came in an hour later, and he was very drunk and very, very angry. She refused to talk to him, and they lived in the upstairs flat on the house here. And the neighbours downstairs suddenly heard a scream and a thump, went to their door, and John McHugh was walking down saying, I've just done Louise. She's lying on the floor upstairs." And they went up, and she was lying with her throat cut on the floor, and there was a bloodstained razor on the floorboards beside her. Now, bizarrely, when he went to court, he got 5 years for manslaughter rather than murder, because the jury basically said that 2 things. One, that he was driven to do it by her actions, and secondly, that he was drunk, which I think is terrible, really, because what they're saying is that if you'd had a drink and you basically, that was your alibi, that you didn't intend to do any harm to anybody. So he was sentenced to manslaughter and served 5 years. Poor Louise Cleaver of Dead Lane. So we're going to walk along to the end of John Street now, and then St John Street. Then we're on Little Park Street. We've got a few more stops before we get to the end, so we're not too far off. Actually, I'm just going to show you at the corner here before we turn off. This is on the left-hand side now is the current Coventry Police Station. We'll have a look over here. And underneath that part on the right hand side is on the right hand side there is Coventry Police Museum. It's like a crime museum. It's a bit like the Black Museum in London, and again, just like that, it's not open to the public. It's invitation only, but I think at the moment it's mostly being boxed up because they're looking to move it at some point. I had a chap who came on this tour when I did it to a group, and he was telling me about his visit to the Coventry Police Crime Museum, and he said that the curator, this old gentleman, liked to have a bit of fun when he was telling the stories, and basically showed him this guillotine, this small guillotine, and wrong way, sorry, and said, "What do you think this for?" And my friend didn't know. And basically he said that there was a gentleman in Coventry who was enamoured with a young lady, and she didn't return the feelings. I'll just come to that in a moment, Jill. She didn't return the feelings, so he was completely smitten, and then obviously thought, well, I'm not going to be any good to anyone. I'm undesirable. There's no point me being a man. So with his little guillotine, he decided to remove a certain part of a gentleman's anatomy that he didn't think he was going to use anymore, and he did. And I'm not sure what became of him, but the guillotine ended up in the museum here. And it was quite funny, because when I gave the tour last week, I was telling that story to a group, and one of the ladies, you could see his thoughts going round in their head, and then she just eventually turned around and said, like, how big was it? And everyone looked at each other and said, well, are you talking about the guillotine or something else? So she suddenly realised what she said. No, I meant the how big was the guillotine? And to which the answer was, it was like one of those small things that you see sometimes on magicians. You see on magician shows where they chop a carrot in half, or they get someone to put their finger in. So that was it. But I think the way that she said it was perfect comedy timing. Yeah, you might be wrong. You might be right, Amanda. I'm not sure, but I'm hoping to get in the museum when it reopens. In answer to your question there, Jill, was it his carrot? I don't know. I don't know, Anne. But Jill asked if the Coventry Museum's moving to Birmingham, because I gave a tour at the West Midlands Police Museum at the lockup on the Peaky Blinders a couple of weeks ago, and basically there's been some discussion that because Coventry now comes under West Midlands Police. Sorry, this gimbal's definitely getting a bit wet. We're going to walk down here. There's been discussion about whether all the Coventry police items and other items from around the rest of the county are going to be moved to Birmingham Museum. The problem with that, of course, is that they've only got a certain amount of space, so they won't be displaying everything that Coventry have got, and including the guillotine and other items. A baby carrot. I like it, Carl. I think you have to come on my tours again. Here we go. So there is a temporary pop-up museum in Coventry City Centre. It's been opened this year, and you can go along and visit. It's got a small amount of area. Someone's had a good evening. So there is also some, which I've heard more recently, only a couple of weeks ago, that can you hear me now? Is my sound okay, Anne? Sorry, where's that gone? Yeah, sorry, it's dropped off. Is that okay? Is that okay? Yeah, sorry, the microphone keeps popping off. There we go. How's that? Okay there, Anne? There we go, thank you very much. But I think the last I heard is that the Coventry Museum is going to be moved to the station, and I don't know whether this is accurate or just a rumour, but the original Victorian station that we looked at that was bombed, and they've still got the cells and everything, the operational facility underneath the building. There's talk that it's going to be moved there, which would be obviously fantastic if it did, because it's certainly got the space. It's in a really historic part of the city, and it's back where it was in the old Victorian police station site. So that would be great. I have rescheduled the Peaky Blinders tour. If everyone who missed that, I think it's the 30th of November, some point later in the afternoon. If you look on my channel. Hi, Coral. Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate that we've been here for an hour already. So if you would like to join the tour again, I'm probably about 10 minutes from finishing now, actually. But I appreciate you have to go, and I very much appreciate you joining me. This is the new Magistrates Court. It's not a snug and lettuce or anything like that. It's very, very nondescript, typical modern judicial system building. But it's very it's not there to entertain us. It's there to do a job there. But the reason we're stopping here is this building opposite, which is the third famous crime, Coventry murder story. And this especially this Georgian house opposite. You can get there. This is a lovely building. Hi Gabby, sorry you need to go. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you get a chance to leave me a review afterwards, I really appreciate it. As I say, the reviews mean everything to me, because it just sort of encourages other people that don't know my channel to come and have a look. That's right, Jill, Kirby House, or 16 Little Park Street, to give it its proper address. It's actually called Kirby House after a solicitor's firm that were there for many years. I think it was Thomas Kirby. But basically, in 1887, there was a man named Thomas Paine and his wife were the caretakers of this building. They lived on the top floor, and they looked after the solicitors' offices in the evenings. Living with them was Thomas Paine's wife's younger sister named Charlotte Taylor. She was 16 when she moved here. And basically lived with the family and helped out with the cleaning and everything, all the duties. But Thomas Paine took a shine to Charlotte, and they started an affair, and he got her pregnant. The baby was stillborn. The wife did find out and tried to prevent it, but after the baby was born, Charlotte found the strength to basically stop what was going on. So she told Thomas Paine, nothing's happening, that's the end of it. We're not carrying on. I'm not seeing you anymore. Going to walk a bit closer. But he wouldn't take no for an answer, and eventually she joined the Coventry Salvation Army. Thanks, Jill. Thanks for that. No, you're very welcome. Hi there, Chris. She joined the Salvation Army and started a platonic relationship with one of the officers there. But Thomas Paine was so jealous and so angry that she wouldn't come back to him, that he decided if he couldn't have it, then no one will. And one day Charlotte went upstairs to do some dusting in the upstairs of this house, and Thomas Paine went up after her, and just like in the story of Louise Cleaver, he took her by the hair from behind her and slit her throat, and she died on the upstairs of this building, Kirby House, that we're looking at now. He was executed. Thomas Paine was executed by James Berry, who was the official executioner of the whole country. Actually, at that time, he was like the celebrity executioner, and it was such a big case. Even though he admitted to it and pleaded guilty, it was still It was still warranted a celebrity executioner. And in fact, this is one of the few cases from Coventry that made it into the pages of the Illustrated London News, which is those of you who know about the Victorian crimes will recognise that all the big cases, shall we say, were featured on those pages. So we're just going to walk around the back here to the final stop. Hopefully I'm not going to bump into that gentleman, that football fan. There, we're going around the back. Kirby House now, by the way, is the Citizens Advice Bureau, and it's combined with this modern building which is on the right hand side now. I just walked past. Just going to walk through here. We just got a few minutes. There's a very historic Coventry building which we're going to stop at, but we're going to be talking about an incident that happened alongside that to finish off, which to my mind, and we've heard some pretty horrible stories so far and some gruesome events. This one to my mind is probably the most heart-wrenching, really. So finish on a high, they always say, or a low in this case. We're going around the back of very salubrious car park, so there's no point trying to look at that. I'm just going to walk on because it's raining quite hard now, and then try and find some cover for the final stop. Hi Toby, thanks for joining me. Sorry it's so late tour. I will be running this one again probably next week at some point. I'll just see what the forecast is doing and what my diary's like. you get an idea really of how deserted Coventry is in the Hi Mandy, no, I was just going to say it's not many people around. It's very, very wet. It's cold. The World Cup's on, and people have probably been in the pub. Knowing Coventry, people have probably been in the pub for a few hours already. Yeah, it's 10 o'clock. So we're all now on Greyfriars Lane, and this building opposite us, which we're going to look at. We got to the side of the road. I'm going to get to this corner here. This is a very, very famous building in Coventry. And I did say at the start that I wouldn't do history as such, but this one's important because it's next to the building where this incident I'm about to describe to you took place. Happened in the building next door. This is Ford's Hospital, founded by a merchant named William Ford in Coventry in the 16th century. In fact, it opened in 1509. It's an almshouses for some of the poor, older people of Coventry. It's still used to this day as for that purpose. Let's try and move that away. It's been renovated a couple of times. Yeah, it's really lovely, Anne. And when I came past last time, that front door was open, and I could sort of see into the. I could see into the courtyard there, and to the left there now. If I come back here and just get it all in there, to the left there now is a really lovely garden, which I think I posted on HeyGo actually. But that's right, Jill. People still do live there today, and those people are probably not living upstairs. I don't think they'll be watching the World Cup. They might be, but they're probably not very happy about someone standing outside talking up at their window. I got a photograph of it from about 1850, I think, with some of the other before the other buildings were knocked down. I'm just going to post that now, and you can see. I've got the corner of if you expand that, there's a pub on the right called the Bell. It's not there now, but it's pretty much where this light is in this building to my right hand side. You can see them, but actually we're a bit further up here on, isn't it? I'll come up here and go in this doorway, shelter from the rain. Yeah, so you can see that's a bit better. You can see like the gables on the roof there. The building to the left on my photograph, which isn't there now, was formerly a lodging house in the up to about the 1870s. Obviously completely demolished now, and the garden's been built for Ford's Hospital. But in 1859, an Irish lady named Bridget Butler came to live in that house. She'd been in Wolverhampton up until I think up until about the April of 1859. Suddenly appeared in Coventry seeking work. She got a job in that lodging house, which to the left in my photograph, as a laundress. Basically, they've taken in the laundry from all the lodgers and then the lodging houses in the vicinity. But the lodge housekeeper's wife, who gave her the job, said, "Well, you won't be here long because you're obviously going to have a baby soon." And Bridget Butler denied she was pregnant. She said, "I've got a medical condition which has caused my stomach to swell up." Anyway, of course, the lady didn't believe that, and then sure enough, about 3 months later, one of the other lodgers in that house went down to the outside, went to the courtyard, which is to the left there where the garden now is, and he went to the outside toilet and thought he heard like a muffled cry. He wasn't quite sure what it was. It was still dark. So he went back to his room, but he still could hear something. He went down, and it seemed to be coming from, as he later told the magistrates, it seemed to be coming from the ash pit, which is basically the hole in the ground where everyone whose house boxed onto the court would throw the ashes from their fire. And he reached in and sort of fumbled around a little bit and pulled out a newborn baby, and brought the baby in into the house. His wife warmed it by the fire, and she'd later told the magistrates that when she first saw the child. She didn't know what it was. It was so covered in ashes, she didn't know what it was. And she washed it and warmed it. And of course, the police were called. The baby was alive, and it did survive. And the police basically arrested Bridget Butler for attempted murder of a child. She was taken to the courthouse, or we saw at the beginning of the Slug and Lettuce. People were magistrates, and she was committed for trial at Warwick. The baby, meanwhile, was taken to the workhouse, Coventry Workhouse, for care, and started doing quite well actually, and started thriving. It was baptised Roseanne Butler. She was given a name and baptised, and then eventually Bridget Butler was given 3 years for attempted murder of a child. And in all that time, Roseanne, the child, stayed at the workhouse and did quite well and grew very healthy. When her mother came out of serving her sentence, she went back to the workhouse to claim her child. And really, they shouldn't have let her take her away, but they did. And unfortunately, she proved to be completely incapable of caring for the child because she died 3 months later of diphtheria. So and then there's a later newspaper story that Bridget Butler herself, she stayed in Coventry for a while, and then she became destitute and had to go to the workhouse. But while she was there, a group of other women who were in there, they knew what happened. They knew that she'd effectively caused the death of her child. And what happened, should have mentioned, is that the reason she had come to Coventry is because her husband had been in prison for 4 years, and he was due to come out. So obviously she'd been up to no good and had a baby by another man, and she didn't want the husband finding out what she'd been up to. The women in the White House basically attacked Bridget Butler so badly she had to go to the infirmary, and she called them to the magistrates for assault. But I think with what had happened and what she'd caused with that poor child, when the workhouse keeper was called up before the magistrates to give his testimony, he was asked by the magistrates which of the women had attacked her. He said, "Oh, I couldn't recognise them. I know it's one of this group, but I don't know which one." So effectively, they were all let off. They were all acquitted, and no charges brought before them. But obviously, it was a case that the workhouse keeper thought she got her just desserts. There's no record of Bridget Butler. It's almost certainly wasn't her real name anyway when she came to Coventry. There's no record of her after that. Hi Danielle. How old was she? The baby was 3 years old when she died from the workhouse, and Bridget Butler was about 24 years old. As I say, she was married to a gentleman from Wolverhampton who knew nothing about what had gone on until when he came out, and then he obviously read about it in the newspapers. So I think that she completely disappeared. I don't know whether she got back with her husband. I don't even know what the husband's real name was, because I'm sure Bridget Butler was just a pseudonym that she adopted when she came to Coventry. So yeah, terrible story. What should have happened is that she was released from Warwick jail and disappeared and left the baby in care of the authorities. I'm sure she would have lived to have a happy life. So I'm going to come over here and then finish off now. I'm sorry I've run over. It's only 15 minutes over there, but I can't get any closer to that, so I'll just flip around here and show you where I am in Coventry. I don't know how many of you guys have been or know Coventry. Let's get in here. It's really a fascinating place. I'm not from here. Thanks, Lorraine. That's very kind to say so. Yeah, well, if you do leave me a tip, I really appreciate it. But I know times are tough for everybody. So but again, absolutely be wonderful if you could. That's right, Carl. I think that would have been it. Should have been basically out of the picture at that point. There's when I do this tour, I've missed out a few. You're welcome, Tammy. I've missed out a few. I've missed out a few stops on the tour to try and keep it to the hour. Thanks, Carl. Yeah, absolutely grisly. But that is, again, that's history. really. I think it's none of these people were criminal masterminds. No one is serial killer or anything like that. I mean, they're just ordinary people that bad things have happened to. And I think in the case of Bridget Butler, I don't think she was necessarily like an evil person. I think she panicked because her husband was due out of prison, and she didn't know she didn't know how else to handle it. So she thought she'd have the child elsewhere and try and remove the evidence, shall we say, and just panicked. That's actually behind me, Lorraine. That's actually just the glow of the shopping centre. You're welcome, Peter. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So there we are. I'll be doing this tour again soon. If you've joined me late on, I'll be doing it again one day next week.